Hi guys, welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's Q&A. So if you're just stumbling across my channel for the first time, you've never seen my face before, hello, my name is Nikki Philippi and I make videos about a lot of things, but primarily around my love for healthy living. I'm what you would consider kind of a crunchy mom. I am a fake homesteader and I love sharing all of those things with you guys. And I also enjoy sharing just my thoughts and opinions around just different things going on in the world. So I'm glad that you're here. And if you are new to my channel, feel free to, what do they say? Smash that subscribe button. That doesn't feel in alignment with me, but subscribe to my channel. Also, if you like these kind of chatty videos, feel free to check out my Patreon, which I will link down below, talking about all kinds of things. So with that being said, I'm not going to blabber anymore because I need to hop right in. I'll be doing plenty of blabbering answering these questions, but yeah, let's do this. So the first question is actually from a friend of mine from back in California, and her name is Laura, and she said, what have you learned from living in 3 different states? I don't know if you've talked about this yet. I've talked about this a little bit peppered throughout my videos, and Laura is a friend from California, which that's the first state that we lived in. I am actually a native Californian, a native Angelino, as is my husband. And then about 5 years ago, we moved to Nashville, Tennessee. And it's so funny in retrospect because the whole reason we moved to Nashville was to get out of the big city and move to a smaller town. And I feel like that just gives you, I mean, that's just tell me you're an Angelino without telling me you're an Angelino, thinking that Nashville is a small town. It's not. And that became very apparent over the last couple of years when everything unfolded with COVID and all of the lockdowns and all of that, which is part of the reason that we ended up leaving Nashville. I've said that before here on my channel, and if you are on my Patreon, you know that I made a video called like the real reason why we moved to Idaho, and I talked about that a little more in depth. So then Idaho was the 3rd state. So California, Tennessee, and Idaho. And they're all very different states with very different weather and very different cultures. And this is going to sound corny, but I think one of the things that I learned from living in those different states, this is like Captain Obvious, but I'm just going to say it, is A, people are very different everywhere you go, which you guys know, I lived in Singapore for 8 months before I started YouTube. So even though I've only lived in those 3 states, I also lived in Asia and I've traveled a fair amount throughout my life. So I know people are very different all over. Actually, probably Singapore was the biggest culture shock of all of them. But we did have a little bit of culture shock moving from LA to Nashville. Nashville has a very different vibe from LA, which I like in a lot of ways. I loved it there. Honestly, I loved my time in Nashville until the COVID era unfolded. And there were other things like even if COVID hadn't unfolded, our house, our location was not exactly what I really wanted and where I really wanted to be living to bring a kid into the world. Anyways, backing up, where we were living is not really where I wanted to have a baby. Like when push came to shove, we were good there for a while, but I wanted a little more space. I wanted an even like slower community, slower life. Like I said, that's a big reason we moved to Nashville. But like I said, people are very different in all of these places, but then at the same time, it's amazing to me the similarities that you see in all of these communities as well. I've definitely learned that going to a new town, moving to a new place, it takes time to establish relationships, and there's really no rushing that. Now, I don't mean that fully. I think that making relationships should be a proactive thing. You should force yourself to get out of your like bubble and reach out to people and show interest in them and try to schedule things and make things happen. But in terms of that actual sense of like intimacy and community and really like knowing people, that only unfolds with time. Actually, I did an interview recently with Jamie from Hopewell Family Care here on my channel. I did a tea talk with her talking about miscarriage and conceiving in your 30s and 40s. And she had a phrase that she said in there that I feel like is applicable to so many things, but she said, time is that irreplaceable, oh, there's a gnat flying in front of me. Ooh. Time is that irreplaceable element in any situation. It's like not the thing, but it's something you can't get rid of, and it's a really important part of it. So I've learned that as well, that it takes time to really develop those, that intimate comfort level feeling in relationships. And it takes time to learn your way around a town and then get that feeling of home. You can feel comfortable somewhere relatively quickly. I've noticed that. But to have that feeling of like home, like my home, it just takes a while for that to develop organically and just be a part of you, if that makes sense. Okay, how did you overcome being a vegetarian to transition to a more balanced way of eating? I've said this before, that when I stopped being a vegetarian, a big reason was because I started craving meat. And I was eating what I deemed, at least, to be a really nutritionally balanced diet as far as like being a vegetarian goes. Like I was reaching for protein sources and healthy fats throughout the plant and legume world to try to, satiate myself and fulfill those nutritional needs. But when I started craving meat, like being someone who inherently is a little bit grossed out by meat, and if I'm being honest, it's still something that like I deal with. Like I have friends that will joke, "You're a recovering vegetarian," and it's like, totally, but I'm always going to have that vegetarian slant to me because it's been in me since I was a little girl. And I am at this point in my life, obviously I'm eating this way for a reason. I'm convinced that like this is what my body needs. This is what my body does better on. I'm stronger in a lot of ways than I've been in a long time. My hair and my skin has changed by eating this way. But beyond that, because that almost sounds like it's just vain and beauty, even though I think that that's a teller of someone's health, my strength has changed a lot. And so the way I was able to overcome it was just this thought of like, okay, I have been vegetarian for so long. And what's that saying? Like, what's the definition of insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. And so a lot of it has been mental in that sense of like, you just need to make a change. And obviously, saturating myself in information around this whole community, around this idea of ancestral eating, specifically also for like my lineage, has helped me get my head around it as well, because it makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of places in the world during times of the year, especially with my like I said, my heritage, my background, where you wouldn't have been able to be a vegetarian. And so learning all of these things, even learning things, this is random and maybe very controversial, but like even plants sense things, even like certain plants will change their colors or retract to try to not be eaten. So even having this realization of like, yes, everything is alive, but just because something is alive doesn't mean you're not going to utilize it as a food source, because even plants are alive, and we're just deciding that that doesn't matter as much, that like their retraction from not wanting to be eaten doesn't matter as much. Well, what am I going to do? Starve myself? Like, no, it just makes sense that like life wants to live, but everything, like the circle of life. There we go. Do we even have to explain that? There's a circle of life. I would consider myself honestly still in a transition. Like I don't necessarily eat the widest array of animal products, although I am trying to vary it up and like expand the types of animal products that I eat. So I'm not just eating the same all the time, but I kind of do eat a lot of the same types of food and animal products at this point. Like I'm a big consumer of eggs. I like chicken. I have these chicken sausages I recently picked up at Costco. I'm like, these are a winner. I'm good with beef and bison, and I try to mix up the types of fish that I eat. And I eat lots of dairy, mostly in the form of cheese. Even though I totally believe in raw milk, and people get so mad at me when I talk about it and say like it's disgusting, I can't really, like some people drink it by the like big glasses, and sorry, I gotta adjust my hair. I don't really do that. Like the closest thing I do to that is like in the colder months, I kind of like to pseudo heat up my raw milk, and I'll do like a whipped egg yolk with sugar, and then I'll pour my milk in and I'll whip that all together with like maybe some vanilla, a little bit of maple syrup or coconut sugar or raw cane sugar. And it's like a delightful little, almost like a coffee drink, but it's not. I think Noelle Covry on Instagram calls it a vanilla cloud. That's kind of where I got most of my inspiration to make that. But that's the closest I really get at this point to like actually drinking raw milk. So most of my dairy consumption is from cheese. Okay, this next question. By the way, I got a lot of good questions. I was telling Dan that yesterday. I'm like, I'm always wondering when I reach out for questions, I'm like, what is anyone going to ask? And like, is anyone going to ask anything? But you guys asked a lot of good questions. So this next one says, what do you think about the whole Disney thing going on? So there's that. Let me just preface this by saying, growing up, I liked Disney movies. I wasn't necessarily a Disney fanatic, but I was into Disney. Actually, fun fact, that's not necessarily a fun fact, but just kind of like a story side tangent here. Growing up in LA, I was also a little bit involved in the entertainment industry around my teenage years. Well, at 13, I played Annie in the show Annie. And because of that show, I ended up signing on with like a management team and an agent. And I started going on like traditional acting auditions. And that was a whole crazy thing. If you want to hear more detail about my experience in acting in general, I actually uploaded a video on my Patreon. It's centered around one specific story, but I also talk about just my experience in general in the entertainment industry. And it's actually called my #MeToo story. That's not clickbait. It actually is what it is. And so if you want to check that out, I will try to remember to, well, I'll just link my Patreon. You don't have to scroll back too far to see it. But getting back to this, Disney, I auditioned for Disney like many times. And I actually, like Hannah Montana, I auditioned for that because they did like 3 or 4 nationwide searches. They kept just auditioning and then they were like, we still don't have the right person. They would do it again. So I kept getting called back. Like every time they did this nationwide search, they were like, maybe she would be right. And they would call me back in. And so actually it was really funny when Hannah Montana came out. I remember being like, I totally read those sides for that audition. Anyways, I auditioned for Disney regularly. I even at one point, do you guys remember? I feel like 90s kids remember this, when they used to do like Disney movies of the month, and it would be like a new movie every month. And some of those movies were like popping in my mind. Well, one month I actually ended up getting very far in the process of casting, all the way to the end. Actually, it was between me and 2 other girls. And at that point, a lot of times in acting, you end up being put, or at least back then, I don't know if everything's changed, but you would get put on something called a veil, which would mean that you were kind of holding those days so that if you booked it, you were open for shooting. It's kind of like them weighing out their final options. Like, okay, which people are available. And then also you actually negotiate your contract ahead of time too. So that's part of what they're taking into consideration in regards to who they're going to pick to cast in a movie. So I made it all the way to the end. It was between me and 2 other girls. The funny thing is though, and I don't know if this happens all the time or if it was just this case. I think it happens fairly regularly though, where like the 3 of us were completely different humans, like totally different girls, because I guess they hadn't decided which way they wanted to go in the movie at that point. So they ended up going with a girl that was in a wheelchair. So it was a totally different direction. Obviously that changes the whole way the movie was told, I guess. So I don't remember the name of the movie. If anyone wants to do some research, I believe it involved dolphins and the main character was in a wheelchair. So point being, I've had some involvement with Disney. Also growing up in LA, I was very close. Oh, did you hear my dryer? Just turned off. Also, I was very close to Disneyland. And so when I became a teenager, a lot of my friends really liked going to Disneyland regularly. And I enjoyed it. It felt like a safe, clean, fun environment with like music to throw back to my childhood. I had a Disney annual pass, so it was basically free to go in whenever we wanted to visit. We still had to drive really far, but it was free to go in. And yeah, so that being said, I'm going to try to figure out how to even word this. I'll just say it really simply. I am not a fan of Disney now. I'm just not, for a lot of different reasons. Honestly, most of the entertainment industry, I feel kind of the same way. What I mean by that is I think most people that are creating content in Hollywood, in New York, just most of the entertainment industry, or at least the people spearheading it, writing scripts, putting these movies out, share similar ideologies. And I've mentioned this before, but I think worldview affects everything. I think that there really isn't such a thing as being non-biased because everybody's seeing the world through a certain pair of glasses, and their worldview is obviously going to impact what they put out there, what their goals are, all of that. And I think that I'm too far gone in the sense that like I can't see Disney's content anymore as just like fun and light. I actually see it as like nefarious, if that's the word we want to use, like low key indoctrination in a lot of different ways. And it's all so slight I feel like you can almost sound like a crazy person when you say that, except not fully anymore, because we all know, and this actually is going to lead into the next question in a minute. We all know, or maybe we don't all know, but recently within the last couple of months, a couple of like Disney exec Zoom calls were leaked, and they're just being really upfront about their goals and the type of characters that they want to see portrayed in their movies. And it's all stemming from their worldview. And I believe that the company as a whole, even if individual team members, people aren't on the same page, the company as a whole is heading in a very specific direction. And, you know, they show you that through little hints here and there, what they're aiming for. And the differences are wide. I, for example, believe that there is a God, there is a creator of everything. And just that basic principle, it's like, the people at Disney clearly don't believe that. That might seem like a vague, random thing to touch on, but I think that affects everything. That affects the way you see the world. And then that obviously affects what type of content you're going to make. And I think language is very powerful. I think art is very powerful. And you can kind of suggest things to people or little kids through content, through language. And even though apparently we're not allowed to say the word groom anymore. You can't say groomer on Twitter or grooming or whatever. I think that you can groom kids, you can groom people to think and move in a certain direction. And honestly, you know, this is kind of like the word indoctrination, right? Like a lot of people who are secular minded would say that religious minded, faith minded people are indoctrinating their children. I would say the same thing about the secular worldview. I actually just think it depends how you want to use the word indoctrination. Like obviously the word indoctrination has like a nefarious evil slant to it. So really it just depends which side you think is evil. But really I just think indoctrination is like education or materials presented through a specific worldview. And so I joke about that, you know, occurring on both sides. That being said, let me just summarize here. Let me put it this way. I feel the same way about Disney that I feel about Target at this point, meaning I have my opinions and my feelings about how the company sees the world and what their goals and their ideology is, and I don't agree with them. We're not on the same page. So therefore, I kind of avoid their stuff at this point. I don't tend to spend my money there or expose my stuff to Disney's content or, you know, buy their stuff in general. Although at this point, going back to Disney, they own so many different arms of media now at this point. I feel like often you're supporting Disney and you don't even realize it. But that's fine. And that kind of actually hits to my final point that I'm trying to make about likening it to Target. And it's that I am one of those parents that's like, no Disney. I am one of those parents that's like, I'm not shopping at Target anymore. But at the same time, I'm not super like paranoid and firm about it. Meaning like if I was on a road trip and Target was the only place to go pick up some aspirin or I needed to get a new something, whatever it is, and Target's the place, then I'm going to Target. But I never go out of my way to go shop at Target anymore, ever. And that's twofold. That's partially because of what I mentioned. I realized that the company just has a completely different worldview and a completely different set of ideas and values, and they're spearheading that. But also because I don't need to spend endless money, right? I've really realized the importance to a degree of frugality as life has unfolded. And we all know the jokes about Target, right? You go there and you end up leaving with all these things that you didn't really need, you didn't really plan for, but because it's so beautiful and aesthetically pleasing and whatever, we end up leaving with it. So it's kind of dualful. It's two sides to that. I'm like, I don't need to be going and just dropping a ton of cash, but also we don't share worldviews. So if I'm going to be particular with my dollar, like this is one of the places I'm not going to give it. And that's how I feel about Disney as well. We don't watch much Disney. And see, this is what I mean. And this is kind of like side note. I saw this whole thing circulating recently on Instagram about being like a crunchy mom. And some people were like bashing it, saying like, there's too much pressure. Everything's going to kill you. I give up. I'm not going to be a crunchy mom. And some people were like, no. Like my friend actually had this hot take on it that I really liked. Just basically talking about like, yes, it is an Olympic sport to me and I'm going to try my hardest. And I definitely identify more with that camp. But that being said, I don't think that everything is black and white, and I don't think you can do everything perfectly. So that being said, Logan's favorite video ever is Winnie the Pooh with letters on YouTube. There's just this like free video on YouTube, or no, it's called Letters with Pooh. He loves that video. Obviously, Pooh is part of the Disney fam. And we have quite a few Winnie the Pooh books. So it's not something that's like, I'm not like psycho about it, like, no, but I have my opinions and I kind of just tend to stick to what I believe in. But there are exceptions. I had to change out the camera battery. Okay. This is kind of a side tangent, but something that really, and it's hand in hand, it holds hands with my whole issue kind of with the medical community, but talking about transitioning. To those of you that don't know, I actually had breast implants. I had breast implant surgery, or I got breast implants. How do we word that? I had a boob job about 8 years ago, I think, 7 or 8 years ago. And so I was a full-blown adult in my mid-20s. I had been thinking about getting breast implants for a long time. I always wanted boobs growing up. I never got the boobs, got married, still wanted them, wanted to get a breast implant surgery. My husband was like, no, I love you. You don't need these. And I was like, I still want them. So my frontal lobe, or whatever that part of the brain is called that's still developing until you're 20 something, had been fully developed. I had thought about it for years. I was in a loving, committed relationship. I got my breast implants, and here I am at 35, and I can tell you that I regret getting them. I wish I hadn't gotten them. Now, it's not for the aesthetic reason. I actually got exactly what I wanted. Praise the Lord in that sense that I didn't have a botched surgery. I think that my boobs are great. Like, they fit my body. I got exactly what I wanted from a visual front. But now that I'm an adult, I realize like, wow, having this like plastic sewed into my body is like directly out of alignment with everything else that I think. It doesn't make sense for my lifestyle. Honestly, at this point, I try just not to think about it too much because it like kind of creeps me out. It's like, that's weird. I put plastic in my body. And luckily, once again, praise God, I don't think I've ever dealt with any kind of breast implant illness. There's not really many new things health-wise that have popped into my life since getting my implants put in. It's pretty much just the same things I dealt with before. But that being said, I have regret over the decision, and I made it as an adult. And I think what's wild is this whole transitioning thing. It feels straight up criminal. Like, I don't know if you guys saw this story of, it was circulating from like a meeting, like a hidden camera video or whatever, from a meeting within Kaiser Permanente in California, which is a doctor's office, a hospital, a provider. They actually used to be my provider. They actually did my hip surgery, which was kind of botched, but that's a separate story. And within this meeting, they were talking about how the youngest person that they had done a gender reassignment surgery on, which was basically a mastectomy, getting rid of this girl's boobs, was 12 years old. And honestly, that feels legitimately criminal. To think about that happening, to think that a 12-year-old could decide that they want to do something and that the adults in the room go, yeah, that's great. Nope, there's not going to be any regrets here. No worries. This is what she says she wants to do. She wants to be a he. Let's get rid of her boobs. I think that is so wild, guys. Wild. It doesn't make sense that the same community that openly talks about brain development and says that, the brain can't fully understand consequences till this age. And I don't really I mentioned this in my previous video when I was talking about Roe v. Wade, and a lot of people were like, you feel weird about it because I mentioned feeling weird about it. They're like, because you know that we shouldn't be telling other women what to do with their bodies. And that's not really why I feel weird. I mean, a little bit, because here's the thing. In my heart of hearts, and I feel it in my core, there's a very strong part of me that's just very libertarian. But it's mostly, I'm split. It's mostly because I feel like you can't control people. Like, there is no controlling people. And so the best thing I can do is just build my family and build my community and, walk out my worldview within that context. But that being said, it's not fully that, because my belief is so strong that when a woman is pregnant, that is a separate person. Yes, that person is using her body to grow and her nutrients. But it's very similar to that even once they're born, in the sense that like somebody has to take care of them. They're being taken care of by another person for a very long time, which is why, like I mentioned in that video as well, assuming that it wasn't fake, I'm seeing videos now circulating of women being like, yes, I think the mom has the right to choose even when the child is like 2 years old. Like, we should kill them if the mom wants to kill them even when they're 2. And I'm thinking like, I don't know that I believe these videos, but if they are true and people are actually thinking that way, it's not too far off. It kind of makes sense, because it is an extension of that. Like, that is what's happening. You're totally responsible for them, and they cannot take care of themselves. They have to have extensive help. So, all right. So this next question says, was it hard growing up Christian and conservative in California, or did you develop your views later? So in a lot of ways, I've always been this conservative. I've mentioned to you guys before, I grew up like listening to talk radio and political stuff, and I've been going to church for as long as I can remember. Even though my faith has gone through transitions and like revivals or reassessment and kind of changing my view of God, I became a believer and put my trust in the Lord so young. So that was just where my head was at and what I was exposed to. And even though, because I'm from Los Angeles, I was exposed to a lot of different kinds of lifestyles, that's just always where my head was at. Now, it wasn't that hard for me in some ways. Now, granted, now that I'm up here in Idaho, I see all the ways that it actually kind of was hard, because my son is going to have a very different life, it looks like, up here growing up as a child than I did. But that being said, things got harder the older I got. Things got harder the farther I moved into the entertainment industry, because it became very apparent that not only everyone I was working with on set and in different gigs had a completely different worldview than me, but it was also very like aggressive. There were a few times where I would try to have conversations with people and they could not hold back their emotions. They couldn't just, like, me talking calmly like this came across to them as being unempathetic. And I mean, well, now they would probably use the word violent, because it's like challenging their existence by having a conversation with them around a topic, which is very funny to me, because it's like talking about Christianity, who's to say that that's not challenging my existence? But anyways, that became very obvious. I actually had a conversation with someone once while working at Universal Studios around the topic of Proposition 8, back when California was trying to decide whether they were going to legalize same-sex marriage. And the girl that I was talking to literally ended up like screaming at me and sobbing. And I remember being like, dang, I hardly said anything. Like, I couldn't get many words out. I couldn't really explain much, and I was trying to just be calm and kind. And she escalated to the point of screaming at me and yelling at me and crying, basically. And that was probably my biggest wake-up call in terms of like, oh, okay, we are on a totally different page, and we are now in a day and age where it's not about tolerance. It's not about looking at someone else making a different decision and go, I don't agree with that decision for X, Y, and Z. I think this, or I'm going to choose to do this. We don't have to agree to disagree. It went into an era where it was like, oh, we're not agreeing to disagree. You want me to switch sides and celebrate your perspective. Agreeing to disagree isn't a thing. And that in general, I feel like is what's going on in culture with this divide, is that people on the left don't want you to just be tolerant. Tolerance to them is celebrating their lifestyle and advocating for their lifestyle. It doesn't just mean being like, okay, you do you. So yeah, so it was hard in that sense. But I will say, when we left LA, obviously that was a big part of it, was wanting to get to a more like-minded area, smaller town, less people. But, to answer the later part of your question, like, have I always had these views? So that's to paint it that way, right? I've always been on the conservative Christian side of the fence, but COVID and everything that unfolded in the last 2.5 years has definitely made me more of a right-wing extremist, if that's the way we want to put it. And I think it's done this to a lot of people, whether that's by design or just happenstance. I think a lot of people have felt pushed farther into their beliefs because of things that they already thought and believed, but then so much has unfolded that I think has just made people, even more firm in the way that they see the world. I know that I see that just as much on the left as I've seen on the right and as I've experienced for myself. It's a really bizarre time to be living in because I've said this before, but a lot of people on the left are like very scared that the country is becoming a theocracy and there's too much aggressive Christian movement. And in so many ways, I think that they're so wrong. But in some ways, I think that they're right. And the ways in which I think that they're right are that I think that the left has made such aggressive moves in their worldview that it's really like inflamed a lot of Christians. Because like I mentioned, they're completely different worldviews. And so even though in my opinion, I actually think everything is going to continue to move the direction of the left, because I think that every single major media organization, every single major tech platform, just so many large businesses are left leading, in my opinion. I think that that's the direction everything is going to continue to go. I think that if you look at media, it's pretty obvious what kind of content is being focused on, what kind of messages are being sold. And this isn't new. That's the thing. The last 2 years has kind of inflamed everything, but it's not like it's new. I mean, Dan and I look back at movies sometimes from like the 90s, and there's actually things that it's like they were grooming us for, if that's the way we want to put it, to be used to certain things. But like some of those things you don't even see in movies now because it was so like in your face sexual. And maybe it's just that I don't watch a lot of those things now, but I actually feel like some of the sexual things that were in movies in the 90s aren't even in movies now. And it's like just as sexually perverse now, but the tone has changed. And the way in which the overhyped sexuality is being sold, it just looks different now. But I think that we were being primed for it then. Actually, that reminds me, whenever I've heard some gay people say before on social media, like that they also feel like conservatives sexualize their kids as well when they do things like talking about, you know, who they're going to marry or like kissing their boyfriend or kissing their girlfriend. And I actually have to agree with that. I actually think that some Christian people or conservative people do kind of impose a certain type of hypersexuality at a young age because they think, oh, well, this is the right type of sexuality. When in reality, sometimes the message is just a little too aggressive, in my opinion. I think that kids should be allowed to be kids, which I know that that's a different definition for everyone. In some ways, some people might say that about me because I talk with my son about birth regularly. He loves seeing birth videos, and honestly, depending on where my headspace is at and how he's acting, I could totally see us involving Logan in a future birth if that's something he wanted, something I felt comfortable with at the time. Point being, my views have gotten stronger within the last couple of years because it's like a giant bomb all went off at the same time. Not only did the whole world dramatically change within the last 2 years, but my world dramatically changed. I became a mother. So all of these things that I already cared about, that I was already passionate about, became highlighted and such a bigger deal to me because now I know, like, I'm raising a person to live in this world. Like, we're about to be the adults in the room as the boomers start dying. And so it was just this feeling of like, I have to take this seriously. So someone asked, what are your thoughts on the paranormal? Ooh, okay. So I'm going to be honest. I don't dip my toes in that world very often, like hardly ever. I actually haven't watched a scary movie since I was a senior in high school. And I don't remember what movie it was, but I know it involved ghosts like communicating through a television or something like that. And I was really like just jumpy and uncomfortable. And after that, I was like, wait a minute. I don't ever have to feel this way ever again if I just never watch a scary movie again. And so I literally haven't watched a scary movie since then. And I don't tend to put my head in that space in general. Honestly, I'm someone who keeps my thoughts around all of that very vague. Now, I have no way of knowing what you mean when you talk about paranormal. Like if you're talking about ghosts, if you're talking about aliens, if you're talking about demons and angels. I have family members, for example, that are Christian that really believe in like spiritual warfare in the sense that like they like to insert themselves through prayer and different types of, I don't even know, interactions, like events that they'll do with friends through prayer and experiences that they'll have that they feel like they're really getting involved in. I don't know, does that qualify as paranormal or supernatural? I don't know if there are specific categories for this and if I'm like answering your question wrong, but they will go into that whole world about like claiming that demons leave and all of those kinds of things. And I don't not believe in those things, but I just think that it's so hard to know what is actually happening that I tend to not give it much attention. Like, if demons are real, if Satan is real, in general, I feel pretty safe and protected because of my faith. So I don't tend to get in that headspace very often. I know when I was a little girl, I remember being a little more scared of things, like when the lights would go out and just wondering like what was behind the closet door and like, you know, just ghosts or demons and all of that in general. And I just found like, as I got older, once again, the best thing for me was just to kind of not think about it, honestly, and just trust the Lord with whatever happens in my life, whatever happens with all of that. So I don't really have the most specific opinions about it. I'm not like, no, there's nothing beyond this. Like whatever we see here is what it is. It's like, I don't know. There could be aliens, although I'm inclined to think that aliens are possibly demons. But, you know, do I even think about that very often? Not really. And if I listen to people talk about it, I tend not to really dwell on like what my firm opinion is because I won't have an answer to it, right? I won't know. So I don't spend a lot of time in the paranormal space. Now, that being said, I still find it interesting. Like back in the day when I was working at Universal and I'd be driving home at like 2 a.m, I would listen to this show called Coast to Coast, which is like a conspiracy theory, alien type show. And they would talk about a lot of these things. And I still found it interesting. Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it. I just don't really absorb it that much into my soul and then get too worried about it. I'm just kind of like, interesting. I will say, I've said this before, and I know this isn't the same thing, but there's like things weave together here, right? There's similarities, there's cross relation to this. And that is, I don't believe in manifestation, but I think there's something there. Meaning, obviously, we hear in the Bible over and over, like the power of the tongue and your words being very important. But I don't really know what that means because, like I said, I don't really believe in manifestation. But I do believe in attitude and words being extremely important to someone's outcome in a situation. But I don't believe that that's the deciding factor because ultimately I can feel it in my core that like what I really believe is that God is in control. And so it's this weird kind of both situation. You know, Dan and I have always talked about this, how many weird things I have happen. Like I will literally be talking about someone and then my phone will ring and it's them, or I'll get a text and it's them. And it's like, what? I haven't talked to that homie in like months or whatever. I have weird things like that happen all of the time, but I don't know what to make of them. I don't know what that means in regards to like my faith. I don't know what that means in regards to like your words and your actions and energy having power and like attracting things. I don't know what any of it means. I just know that there's something there and I have crazy stuff like that happen all of the time. Similarly to like, if you've heard this story, there was this scientist that did an experiment where they basically spoke to water and then they looked at the water under the microscope, assuming this experiment was legit, right? Supposedly, they did that and they found that the water that they spoke lovely things to and like life-giving words turned into like these beautiful, almost like snowflake, like the water droplets or whatever, turned into like beautiful symmetrical shapes. And the water that they had spoken ugly, violent, bad words to ended up looking like deformed and kind of gross, to be honest. And so I find that very interesting as well. Just interesting. There's a lot of things that I observe in life that I don't necessarily know that I have an opinion to, but I find it interesting to just learn about. And I kind of like store it in the back of my head and go, well, that'll be interesting to see how life plays out and see what other kind of information I receive and just like see where I land. So yeah, paranormal stuff, metaphysics, metaphysical type stuff, all of that. Hi Casey. My brother's walking by with his dog. Okay, lighter question finally. Someone says, what has been your favorite age so far? Newborn, toddler, etc. I'm going to be really annoying and say I don't know. I don't know. I will say the toddler phase is hard because he is so active. Like he is nonstop going and he can entertain himself, but it feels sometimes like he always has to be entertained. But like I said, he can't entertain himself. I'm looking at the flashcards he was just playing at. Sometimes I'll be like, Logan, where are you? And he's like, I'm reading a book in my room. So like he'll do things, but it's so go, go, go all day long. It's very difficult for me. And learning how to help a toddler manage their emotions, that's been difficult. Also, Logan stopped taking naps once we moved from Nashville to here. I was like not in a good headspace for like a solid 6 months after moving here. And we were living in my parents' basement. And so all of those things just made nap time fly out the window. He was a regular napper till then he wasn't, and now he is not on his nap game. So he doesn't nap, so that makes it a little hard too. But that being said, not napping sets me up for like almost the easiest bedtime ever. Like very often I go put Logan to sleep and he's out like immediately, basically. So yeah, but I don't know, because at the same time, toddlerhood is filled with like so much beauty and cuteness. It's literally overwhelming. Like his little face and hands and voice is so cute, and continuing to watch a person just come online more and more and more and share with you more of what's in their mind and what their interests are and what they dislike and what they like is so amazing that like it makes up for the hard times. And when he was a newborn, he was much easier and so cute in his own ways, right? Newborn babies. It's the cutest. But, well, I'm not saying that is the cutest, but I'm just saying it's so cute. But it was hard in a whole different set of ways because or a whole different set of reasons. I had no idea how to care for a baby. I was learning as I was going. It was terrifying. And I'm really interested to see if God gives us another baby, what it's like the second time around, because I think I'll be way more relaxed this newborn round if we get to have another baby. So speaking of which, someone asked, did you and Dan talk about names for your sweet baby in heaven? And it's okay if it's too raw. Yes, we did. And man, I actually didn't think I was going to answer this question, but sometimes when I'm filming, I change my mind as I go. And that's kind of what just happened in like a split second. I didn't want to share it originally because you guys know we get a lot of hate for everything that's unfolded within the last year, and also just our stances and who we are and all of that. And people already wish death upon me and my family, and people tell me that they're glad that I miscarried. And so part of me was like, I don't want to share this. I'm keeping this close to myself. But then right now as I'm filming, I'm sitting here thinking like, the whole thing with me continuing to move forward and share is me deciding that there are just mean people that exist in life, and I'm not going to let them squash out my flame. That sounds lame, but like my flame of like life and passion and desire to share and desire to help other people. And I can take the rudeness, and God's been stretching me and growing me through this. So I probably didn't need to give that whole intro, but the point being, I wondered and felt through our pregnancy that like if it was a girl, and I never said anything. Our thought, and I don't know if we'll do this time around, was that we were not going to find out the gender until we gave birth. So we were never going to find it out until we gave birth. But I kept feeling like a girl. Dan and I never spoke about that. We never said it to each other. I never said, I think I'm having a girl or anything like that. But after I miscarried, there was this time where Dan and I were having a discussion in the bathroom, and he referred to our baby as she. And when he did that, I almost took it. Well, I didn't almost. I did end up taking it as like confirmation. Like, I'm just deciding it was a girl. And he knows this. We've obviously talked about all of this. But then I didn't tell him for like another month or so that I had actually named the baby in my mind. And I didn't know if that was rude, if that was something I should have talked about with him. I didn't feel like it, and it wasn't something that I was officially meaning to do. It just kind of happened, and the next thing I knew, my little girl's name was Hope. And I shared that with him, and I shared that with my mother-in-law actually when she was out visiting. And that is kind of what we've settled on, that our baby's name was Hope. And I think that that's beautiful for so many reasons, including what is hopefully to come in our family. And yeah, so that's the end of that answer. This is not a Q&A, but someone asked if I could pray for her mom who's diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer. And I'm going to just pray for that really quick, because why not? It's my Q&A and I can do whatever I want. So, Lord, please be with Shays' family and Shays' mama right now as she's going through this insanely difficult trial, Lord. Please care for her whole family. Please cover them in peace. Please give Shays' doctors and Shays' healthcare providers wisdom and discernment as they move forward with this diagnosis and figure out how they want to care for her. Give them guidance, give them wisdom as they live their day-to-day life together. Help them to enjoy every moment as the gift that it is. Help them to find the good moments in these difficult days and help their hearts and minds to dwell on those moments, to dwell on every smile exchanged, every laugh that they share. Help them to tuck those memories in their hearts and minds and help them to be covered in your peace that surpasses all understanding. This life is so fleeting, and I just pray that you're with her family during this trial. And in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, so didn't expect to do that, but I felt moved to do it while I'm looking at questions. Okay, so Emily says, how do you stay so motivated to eat healthy? Okay, my biggest motivation for healthy eating is just that, health. I think sometimes, not all the time, but I think sometimes if someone hasn't been injured enough or sick enough and they're not desperate enough, and there is this level of like desperation being able to help propel you towards your goals. And for me, my goal is health. My goal is strength so that I can not only play with my baby and be with my baby and be a good partner to my husband, but also I want more children. And so I need to be strong for that. And we can't control everything, right? In a lot of ways, control is complete illusion. But in other ways, like I always use this analogy, like you can choose to not run in the middle of traffic with your eyes closed. Like there are some obvious choices in day-to-day life that we can make. And so many decisions that I think impact our health are decisions that I make. And so I want to make good ones to support my body the best I can. Now, that being said, it's not just that, although that is a large part, but it's coupled hand in hand with I have a passion for food. You guys know that. And I have a passion for abundant, nutrient-dense food. And I always have, even before I was eating this current way, when I was vegetarian, it was a similar philosophy around abundance and nutrient density. And I think developing a passion, I think it's good to have both, to have kind of this fear and this desperation as part of your motivation, but that's also a little bit like Debbie Downer-ish. So I think it's also good to have in your other hand a passion and a love for good quality food, for sunshine, for good water, and to really like kindle and develop that interest and that love as well, so that you can be motivated not only from that place of like I said, health and desperation and all of that to want to be the best you can be, but also from a place of just like love and enjoyment. So that for me is how that has happened. Okay, someone else says, thoughts on sunscreen. Okay, so my general thoughts are, I think sunscreen is really bad now at this point. Like a lot of chemical sunscreen. I do think that there are sunscreens that contain natural ingredients that are not harmful, or at least as harmful to the body, that contain more like minerals, right? Like zinc oxide, I think is one of them that it tends to be in like cleaner sunscreens. So I don't think sunscreens are good. That being said, I don't think it's good to fry your skin. I actually think that the way that we were meant to live in the sun was through moderation, similarly to diet. Like you don't sit there and eat nonstop for 4 hours. Like you got to stop shoving food in your mouth for half of a second because we're not supposed to be eating nonstop. And I think it's similar to the sun. I think that sunscreen has given people a false sense of just being able to like bake in the sun. Like, I've got my sunscreen on, when it's like, I don't even think it's good to bake in the sun that long. And I'm like a big proponent now of sunshine, but I think it's more of managing it in like a natural way, if and when possible. Meaning, like, I'm more of a fan of hats, of shirts, I went to the beach the other day and I wore like a shawl type thing to keep my shoulders kind of covered. And I think getting color can be good. Like, I don't think it's as bad as the way that we've been sold that it is. And I think that the sun has so many health benefits. It's actually really sad to be completely blocked out of those rays all of the time. But I also think it's not good and kind of sad to be slathering yourself in sunscreen all the time, because I think there is a potential that sunscreen is causing a lot of problems, that baking these ingredients into your skin is causing a lot of problems. And so I'm mostly just like not a nut about it. Like, I don't really do it most of the time. I'm preferring to do hats and t-shirts and little shawls to cover up for all of us. It's the same thing with Logan, but occasionally I will use it. It's just got to be a really special occasion. Like, I think I've used it once this summer so far. And that's not just because I'm in North Idaho. I've been out in the sun many times, but I've only felt the need to use it once. So like when my family's coming up to town next week, both my sisters, and we're planning on like renting a boat and doing like this whole like inner tube thing down a river. I will probably use some sunscreen that day because I think it's going to be a little bit like some excessive sunshine. But in general, I like to treat the sun like I treat other things. I wouldn't do anything. I wouldn't exercise nonstop for 4 hours, although I used to back in the day when I was a dancer. But I think that kind of messed me up. So case in point, proven. But I think that it's good to do moderation. It's like, go in the sun, then seek some shelter, get under a tree or put on a hat, then, go back out in the sun, maybe flip sides or change directions, then, take a break, find some shade, put on a shirt. Like, I think it should just be more like, I think we should have more of a practical approach to sun time in general. Okay. Are you doing anything to prevent severe morning sickness next time? And the answer is yes. I will say this first off. I've never taken beef liver supplements, which is one of the things. I mean, I'm doing that for health in general, but I've heard a lot of people say that can also help to prevent morning sickness because beef liver helps the overall health of your body in general, but it also supposedly helps to support your liver. Also, at the recommendation of my friend Lee, or Little House in the Mountain here on YouTube, she recommended that I take milk thistle. I believe that's what it's called. So I started taking that actually just within the last week. So that is also for the support of the liver. And a lot of people believe that your liver not functioning properly can be a part of why some women get such severe morning sickness. Also, you will probably start seeing very soon, I'm about to start wearing that wrist zapper bracelet. I ended up getting, I don't remember what it's called, the Emmer Touch or something like that. Not the relief band, because that was more money than I wanted to spend at the time. But it's like another one that gets great reviews as well on Amazon. I just haven't started wearing it yet. But I'm probably going to start wearing it within the next week, because also my friend Lee told me that for that to work with morning sickness, you actually have to start before you're pregnant. And that would make sense because a lot of the reviews that I'm seeing online for those bracelets is that they don't work the greatest for morning sickness, but every single review was from someone who started using it after they were already sick. And Lee was like, no, you have to start before. So who knows, but I'm willing to try it. I can't even think of what else. Those are really kind of two main things that I've been doing in hopes to curb morning sickness the next time. I'm continuing just to try to eat a nutritionally dense diet and honestly just hoping for the best. Oh, that's what I was going to say. So the zapper thing in general, it supposedly helps to tone your vagal. I think that's what it's called, your vagal nerve, which is essentially just like a big bunch of nerves that runs down the center of your body. Like, it's kind of everything coming together into one giant bundle. But there are apparently a lot of ways to tone the vagal nerve. That's not vagus nerve, right? I think it's vagal. Tell me. But other things are in that as well, including singing, humming, sunshine, grounding, like all these other things. So I'm just actually screenshotted it. I can't remember the whole list, but Yeah, even things like meditation, like prepping your mind for pregnancy apparently helps as well. But I haven't really dove into that hardcore yet. I was looking at a hypnobirthing thing, like a Christian hypnobirthing channel the other day. But yeah, that's kind of where my head's at. Okay, someone said, I've been following you since the early days of acne videos. Any updates on your current skincare? To those of you that haven't been around that long, I used to struggle with severe cystic acne, which kind of is a whole thing. My hormones, I think, were a mess. I didn't even get my period until I was 18, and that was only because I was put on a progesterone supplement, and that's what kicked my period into gear. And those following years, as well as like leading up to that, I just basically struggled with cystic acne. Thank God it's gone now. If I'm being honest, I almost never break out now, which is wild. Actually, my skin is low-key like the best it's ever been, which is crazy. The only thing I've been struggling with a little bit lately, actually it's been more than a little bit, but it's been a little bit within the last like week or so because I think I've maybe pinned down what's going on. We'll see. But I've developed like a little rash around my nose within the previous, like the last few months. But I am back on my probiotics now and I'm being really consistent. And I think the rash is like way lightening up. So I think there was just something obviously going on in my gut. But that was kind of weird. But other than that, my skin has been doing amazing. I've been using the skincare line from, what is her name? Noelle Covery. It's called Healthy Hair Forever, which is kind of weird because it's skincare as well. But it's all like a saturated fat skincare line and like toxin free, very clean. And it has caffeine in it, which is supposed to be amazing for the skin. And I'm actually almost out, which is really upsetting because I've been loving it. But that's kind of the gist. I also use my frownies basically every night. I don't do my whole skin routine together. Like usually I've washed my face and then I'll put Logan to bed. And then after Logan's to bed, maybe like closer to when I'm actually going to go to bed and after my skin has had time to soak in the skincare products is when I put my frownies on. I've had a few people ask that because they're like, don't your frownies just like slip around over your skincare? It's because I wait anywhere from like an hour to two afterwards before I actually put the frownies on. So yeah. Okay. Would 2011 Nikki be surprised by 2022 Nikki's life? Asking because I've been a subscriber for years and I feel like you and I have kind of drifted into the same realm of crunchiness and Christianity. LOL. Fun to see your areas of your growth in these areas. Yes. Like I mentioned, in so many ways, I am the same Nikki, like I'm me. But then in other ways, you guys know, before I moved to Nashville, I had never even had a house plant. Like I had never kept a regular plant alive. So in a lot of ways, considering that like one of my top dreams now is to like really learn how to be a pro gardener in the sense of like, at least I can keep them alive and just like learn more and more about how to really utilize the land that I have, what I've been given, and how to grow as much off of that land as possible. And a lot of that is really motivated by my love of food and nourishment. But being in the garden is also just super relaxing and awe-inspiring as well. Like seeing God create and grow something from scratch is like insane. And you guys know, or you don't know, was a big part of me deciding that I wanted to actually try and have a biological child. There was a lot that went into that. As you guys also probably know, I've dealt with chronic pain for forever. Although, like I've said before, the way I felt in the last like year, two-ish has been like stronger and probably some of the best that I felt in a long time. I worded that sentence weird, but I think you get what I'm saying. So yeah, Nikki would be surprised in that sense that I'm like a fake homesteader. And even that my views on like birth and adoption have changed as well. Like the way that I see the state of the world has changed around those things. And yeah. Okay, Rachel says, I'm thinking about buying a Berkey water filter. Do you still love yours? Yes. Can you see it? I feel like you can see it in the background. We love our Berkey water filter. Like the water that comes out of that thing is so tasty. It's so affordable. Like it's an expensive upfront cost, but when you do the math and break down how much water you get, it ends up being like, until you need to replace your filter, like 2 cents a gallon, or maybe it's like 5 cents a gallon. It's insane. It's so cheap. The water is so amazing. Those filters basically clean out like everything, viruses and parasites and fluoride and all of these things that I don't want in my drinking water. And two things in regards to that. One, I actually have a Berkey discount code that I will link down below, and it is an affiliate link. So if you're looking at getting a Berkey and you want a discount code and you want to support me, that link is there and I really appreciate it. But second off, I think by this point, I should have uploaded it last week. I finally put up like my in-depth Berkey water filter review. So that is on my channel as well if you want to check that out. So, okay, what has been the best and what has been the hardest part of becoming a mom? Probably time management and emotional management. Meaning, I think the first is pretty obvious. It's like hard to get anything done with a child. At least my child. I find that, you know, he just takes a lot of work, a lot of time, a lot of attention that, let me just throw out there, that I want to give to him. Like, I'm so obsessed with my kid. So much makes sense to me now in that sense. Like having a kid, I'm like, oh man, yeah, I get it. Like there's an obsession there. I had to pause this because Dan just got home, but I'm going to wrap this up. But I'm going to finish this thought. Oh, the other thing has been emotional management, meaning, and I think this is very common. Everybody with toddlers probably understands this. But because toddlers are still just learning how to regulate their emotions, I have found that I've really had to learn how to let him feel his emotions without being like completely knocked off track with mine. Like learning how to remain calm in a storm, for lack of a better word, has been really stretching and hard. And worthwhile to learn. I can tell these are worthwhile skills that I'm learning here, but it's probably been one of the harder things is like learning how to control my emotions. And, you know, sometimes I've had different phases within my journey where it was like, there was no controlling. I'm not trying to shame anyone, meaning like when I had post-weaning depression, that wasn't just like control your emotions, get on it, like stop sinning or whatever. It was really a hormonal, horrible, almost out of body type experience. But there are other times where it's like my son's having a meltdown. How do I do my best to control my emotions and still speak kindly and firmly and handle the situation without being like, freaking out over his mood and where he's at? I think I'm going to answer one more question, then I got to go because I've been talking for 12 and a half years. But I am thinking that this probably warrants what I did last month as well, meaning like this probably warrants a part 2 because I've actually hardly touched on any of these questions. I've just been talking so much. Okay, this is my last question. This is a little heavy for a last question. We'll see if I can wrap this up. But someone asked, have your periods been normal after miscarriage? Mine are short. And I just wanted to say, no, not really. I mean, they've been normal in the sense that like they hopped back onto a schedule and they're like on a schedule now. But my periods have been extremely heavy. And actually, it's interesting hearing you say that because that's like the opposite of what I've heard from a lot of other people I've talked to. Everybody is different. I'm not trying to like freak you out, but that's just very interesting. I will say my first period after my miscarriage, if I'm remembering right, really wasn't very difficult. My second kind of was, but I think that was actually because of some lifestyle things, some decisions I made that month that affected my period. And then my last one, I mean, they've all been heavy and long, but I'm talking about pain, right? And then my last one was super low key in terms of pain. Like I really didn't feel very off at all during my period, which was amazing. And I think has contributed to the different lifestyle and nutritional diet decisions that I've been making. But yeah, an abnormal period I think is extremely normal after a miscarriage. But I guess, I don't even know. Now I'm feeling that was a weird answer because we have different answers. But I'm sorry that you're dealing with that. And like I said, I think having a weird cycle, similarly to after giving birth, it's always weird. Like, when are you going to start your period again? How is this going to go? I think that's just normal, this time of like regulating it again. But yeah, I would focus on making sure you're getting enough calories, enough actual nutrition, enough rest, enough sunshine, enough good clean water, enough healthy socialization with people that you love, and just care for yourself because you're healing. And I'm sorry for your loss as well. So with that being said, I'm going to go now, guys. I will probably be doing another one of these, like I said, in a couple weeks because I still have so many questions that I didn't even touch / that I really want to answer. So that's it. I'm going to go now. And I will, God willing, see you guys back here soon with another new video. And like I said, maybe I didn't say this, feel free to, what do they say? Smash that like button or subscribe button if you're new here, or if you just liked this video. It really helps to support my channel. And that's it. All right. Bye, guys.